February 22nd, 2026. Buenos Aires, Argentina. A public park. On a Sunday afternoon. Hundreds of people came together there that day. And the strange thing was, no one asked them to. They were not marching. They were not holding signs. No one was giving a speech. They just came. And they stood in the open air, quietly, next to each other.
If you had walked past that park, you might have stopped. Not because anything was loud, not because anything was broken, just because the air felt different. Still, but watching. Like every person there was holding a feeling they had never had a word for.
And then one of them told a reporter what they believed, what all of them believed. They said they were not human.
On the other side of the world that same night, Maya was sitting alone in a dark room, just her and the light from her phone.
She was watching a video of that park in Buenos Aires. She watched it once, then again, then a third time. Not because it was funny, not because it was strange. She just kept going back, the way you sometimes do with a video you cannot really explain. You watch it again and again. Something in you gets quiet and stays there. Maya put her phone down. The room was dark, but the question was still with her. Who are these people? And why does watching them feel like something I recognize? So, what exactly did Maya just watch? The word Therian is not new. It goes back to 1993. There was a small online forum, the kind that only existed in the very early days of the internet. The forum was called Alt Horror Werewolves, which honestly sounds much more frightening than it actually was.
It started as a place for people who wrote werewolf fiction, but something shifted. People began showing up not to write stories about wolves, but to say something quieter, something more personal. I don't just find wolves interesting, I feel like one. That community moved from forum to forum, decade to decade, from mailing lists to early websites, then to Reddit, then to TikTok. And on TikTok, it didn't just survive, it exploded. The hashtag Therian has now been watched billions of times. In Argentina alone, the same country where Maya watched that gathering, there are over 2 million posts on the topic.
So this is not a small thing, and it is not new. Researchers at the University of Northampton spent years studying this community, carefully, without judgment. What they found was not a phase, not a trend. What they found was something that grew slowly, over time. A deep personal process that developed in the people who experienced it. It wasn't something people chose, or performed, or decided one afternoon. It was already there.
For Maya, it started around the age of 11. She was sitting in class one day, excited about something. She doesn't even remember what. And then she felt it. A sensation at the base of her spine, like a tail. She sat very still for a moment, not sure what had just happened. She looked behind her. Nothing was there. She had no word for what she had just felt. She didn't know that tens of thousands of other people had felt something like this, that there was even a name for it.
That name is Phantom Cheft. The community she would eventually find had language for all of it. Her kin type, the animal she felt she was wolf.
Shifting described those moments when the animal felt very close. And a phantom shift was exactly what happened in that classroom, a feeling of a body part that wasn't physically there. She didn't know any of that yet. She just knew something had happened that she couldn't explain.
One more thing worth knowing. Therian is not the same as furry. Furries are fans of animal characters that look and act like humans. It's a creative hobby, a fandom, something people enjoy. Therians aren't describing a hobby. They're describing something they didn't choose, something they say was already part of them, long before they had a word for it. In surveys, around 85% of Therians say they feel less than fully human. For furries, that number is 35%. And in 4 separate studies, 76% of Therians reported something called species dysphoria, a feeling of real discomfort when their body doesn't match the animal they feel they are. That's a meaningful difference.
And here's something the numbers also show, something that goes beyond this one community. 79% of Gen Z say they feel lonely. Not once in a while, not on difficult days. It's a feeling that sits underneath everything, always there, even when nothing is wrong. If there's someone in your life you want to send this to, maybe that number is exactly why.
Because here's the question that actually matters. Not, is this normal? But normal as defined by whom, and for whose benefit? The people in that park in Buenos Aires were not asking to be understood. Neither was Maya, watching alone in her dark room. They were asking to be seen, and that is a different question entirely. Have you ever felt like an outsider in every room you walked into? Not because of anything you did, just because the space never quite fit. You don't have to be a Therian to know that feeling.
Maya didn't grow up in an unusual world. She grew up in a world with a promise. There was an agreement, quiet, unspoken, but real. Study hard, work hard, and life will take care of the rest. A job, a stable future, a place where you belong. Most people in her parents' generation believed that promise. For them, it worked.
For Maya's generation, something changed. For the first time in recorded history, people who just finished university now have a higher unemployment rate than people who have been working for years. Not in one country, in nearly every developed country at the same time. In the UK alone, last year, more than 1 million graduates competed for just 17,000 entry-level jobs in 1 year.
And it's not just work. The places where people used to find each other, churches, community centers, local organizations, the office where you knew everyone's name, those spaces have been getting quieter for decades. Not all at once, just gradually less full.
Short-term work replaced the job that felt like it knew who you were. The recommendation system replaced the town square. And belonging, that feeling of being somewhere that holds you, became something you had to build alone, from scratch.
The U.S. Surgeon General called it a national epidemic. Not sometimes lonely, not lonely on hard days, a feeling that was always present, underneath everything. As damaging to your body, the research showed, as smoking 15 cigarettes a day.
Have you ever done everything right, followed every step, kept every rule, and still felt like the world didn't keep its promise? That's not a personal failure. That's a generation.
If every place that used to give people a sense of belonging has become quieter, where does a person go to feel like they belong?
Maya isn't more alone than the people her age. She isn't more broken or more lost. She just feels what millions of people her age feel at exactly the same time, in exactly the same world. Most of them don't know the others are out there feeling it too. That's not unusual. That's the soil.
TikTok didn't give Maya something new. It found something that was already there. That's not a small difference. That's the whole difference. Here's what algorithms actually do. Those systems that decide what you see next, when you look past all the talk about them. They notice. They notice what you slow down for, what you watch twice, what you hover over without clicking, the pattern of your attention, even the parts you don't have words for yet. Maya wasn't searching for Therian content. She wasn't even looking. One evening, somewhere between a cooking video and a travel reel, something appeared in her feed. A clip of someone describing exactly what she had felt since she was 11. That feeling of moving through the world at the wrong frequency. Not crazy, not broken, just off, like a signal that couldn't find its station. Something had been waiting to be received, and something had just received it.
She didn't search for it. The system found her. Because months of her behavior, every time she paused a little longer, every video watched quietly at midnight, every topic she kept coming back to, but never clicked, it already told a machine something about her that she hadn't found words to say yet. And then the community. For the first time in Maya's life, she didn't have to explain herself before being understood.
She didn't have to make the feeling easier for people to accept. Didn't have to make it sound less strange before sharing it. People in that community already knew because they had been carrying the same thing. They had the same midnight feeling. They had already spent years without words for it. This is what digital space can do. Not create loneliness, but find the lonely and bring them toward each other. The algorithm didn't cause anything. It just moved faster than the world outside ever bothered to.
Maya was 11 when she first felt it. Not the word, not the community, just the feeling. Something inside her that moved at a different speed than everything around her. Around that same age, something else was happening. Something that happens to everyone. The brain was asking a question, asking it again and again. Who are you? Not as a test, as a task. Researchers call this identity formation, the work of figuring out who you are, testing different versions, looking for the one that fits. It is not confusion. It is the work itself. Maya was doing that work. She just needed somewhere to do it.
Here's what makes that work harder than it sounds. Most places where that work happens come with conditions. School, belong here if you perform well enough. Home, belong here if you stay within certain lines. The friend group, belong here if you are the right kind of person. A psychologist named Carl Rogers studied what happens when belonging always has a condition, when the message underneath every relationship is, I will accept you if. When every space you are in comes with an if, you stop bringing your real self to any of them. You bring the version that will pass.
Maya had been bringing that version for as long as she could remember. Have you ever felt that? That you had to be the right version of yourself first, before anyone would let you stay? there's something else happening in Maya's world at the same time. The economy, the future, the job, all the things that were supposed to be possible feel like they live outside of her hands. And when the world outside your hands keeps changing, something in the brain holds tighter to the one thing that still feels like yours, the story of who you are. Not as a way of hiding, because it's the last place where the choice still belongs to you.
If belonging has a condition in every place you go, school, family, the world that was supposed to be waiting, what does the brain do? It looks for somewhere without one.
And that's not weakness. That's not confusion. That's not a phase. One more thing worth knowing. Species dysphoria, the feeling that your body is the wrong kind, is real discomfort. But discomfort is not the same as disorder. It becomes a concern only when it causes serious distress and pulls someone away from reality. For most people in the Therian community, it does neither. What Maya found was not a disorder. It was a place to do the work, finding the ground to stand on, in a world that kept moving it.
But here's where the science gets interesting. Because the brain doesn't just look for somewhere to belong, it also decides what counts as your body. In 1998, researchers placed a rubber hand on a table. The real hand was hidden. They touched both, the rubber one, the real one, at the same time. Within 11 minutes, the brain claimed the rubber hand as its own. Not a trick. Body ownership is something the brain builds, from what it sees, what it feels, and whether those two things agree. Your brain holds a map of your body, not an exact copy, a working model. The map reflects how you use your body, not how it's built, and it changes.
You know that feeling, waking up and for a second your hand doesn't feel like yours? You just ran that experiment. People who lose a limb still feel it, because the map doesn't disappear when the physical part does. Phantom shifts, feeling a tail, ears, wings the body doesn't have, follow the same logic.
And research suggests that many people in the Therian community have body awareness that works at higher sensitivity, the way the brain senses what belongs to it. Not unusual, just tuned differently. The body you feel you're in may not be the body the mirror shows, and the brain has known this long before you thought to ask. So, let me hold all of this with you for a moment. A broken world, communities that disappeared, a signal that found you, a brain building a self from what was available, a body map that was always a construction. If all of that was true at the same time in one person, what would make the most sense as an answer?
You already know the answer. A world that broke its promise. Communities that quietly emptied. A signal in the dark that said, "Here, this way." A brain in the middle of the hardest work it will ever do, building a self, using whatever materials were close. And a body map that was never as fixed as anyone told you it was. These aren't 5 separate things. They're one system, running correctly.
And here's something older than all of it. When humans didn't feel safe, when the world was too large, too dark, too uncertain, the brain looked for a safe model somewhere else. It always has. Not just now, not just this generation. This has been true for 31,000 years. 31,000 years ago, in a cave in the south of France, someone carried a torch underground and stayed long enough to paint. Half human, half animal. Not a joke, not a mistake,
something worth painting. The Egyptians gave their gods the heads of jackals, a bridge between the human world and something larger. The Norse wore wolf pelts into battle, not as costume, but as claim.
The Japanese told stories for 1,000 years about a fox that walked between two worlds. Across South Asia, a being with wings and a human body carried the divine from one place to another. There is no culture that didn't make this thing. Not one.
The need to draw a line between human and animal, and then to cross it, is not new. Maya didn't start online. She's the most recent page in a book humans have been writing for 31,000 years.
The brain doesn't care what the safe model looks like. It only cares whether it works, human or animal, ancient or digital, cave wall or TikTok. The question was always the same. Where can I be something in a world that keeps saying I'm not enough? Every part of that system was working correctly. The output only looks strange to a world that doesn't understand the system.
She's still at that same desk, same room, same phone, same girl who watched that Buenos Aires clip 3 times and didn't know why. We do now.
She's still at that desk, same room, same phone, same light from the screen. But we see her differently now. Not because she changed, because we understand what she was carrying. She wasn't looking for someone new to be. She was looking for the word that already fit. That feeling, the tale she noticed when she got excited at 11 years old with no name for it, it wasn't new. It wasn't something she picked up online. It was already there. She didn't become a wolf. She found the language for what she already was.
When we understand the system, we stop judging the output.
That's Aguara, 15 years old, Belgian Malinois, pack leader of the group in that Buenos Aires park, the same February morning we started with. She isn't an example of something going wrong. She's the same output, the same system, running in a different body, in a different city, with a different name for the same thing humans have always done. You don't have to agree with Maya. You don't have to understand what it feels like from the inside. You just have to understand why she is the way she is.
She didn't want to be a wolf. She wanted somewhere to stand. Is there something you felt your whole life and never had a word for? And sometimes, understanding is enough.